The 90th Psalm of the Christian Old Testament was written by Moses, the man of God and deliverer of the people of Israel out of Egyptian slavery. He was their pastor, if you will, of some 2 million people for 40 years. And he had this to say in the 90th Psalm: Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn man to destruction and say, Return, O children of men. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. You carry them away like a flood, they are like a sleep. In the morning they are like grass which grows up. In the morning it flourishes and grows up. In the evening it is cut down and withers. For we have been consumed by your anger, and by your wrath we are terrified. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your countenance. For all our days have passed away in your wrath. We finish our years like a sigh. The days of our lives are 70 years, and if by reason of strength they are 80 years. Yet their boast is only labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knows the power of your anger? For as the fear of you, so is your wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? And have compassion on your servants. O satisfy us early with your mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days in which you have afflicted us, the years in which we have seen evil. Let your work appear to your servants, and your glory to your children, and let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish the work of your hands for us. Yes, establish the work of your hands. My name is Michael Chandler, and I'm the pastor of the Victor Valley Bible Church in Victorville, California, and I would like to welcome you to this Bible on Our Day broadcast on the subject of wasted time, or steward of God's opportunities. Several years ago, the Journal of Popular Music Studies published research showing that there had been a marked rise in songs permeated with negativity. Researchers analyzed the lyrics of some 6,150 Billboard 100 songs, covering all the years from 1951 through 2016. What they observed showed that anger, disgust, fear, and sadness have increased significantly, while joy, confidence, and openness expressed in pop song lyrics have markedly declined. Sadness is reportedly so widespread among youngsters, especially teenage girls, that the Centers for Disease Control is now tracking it. According to a 2003 study, 4 in 10 students, that's 40%, had persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. So we shouldn't be surprised that music and cultural indicators reflect the same reality. A number of these popular songs, I recently learned, are about wasting time. Bands like Skid Row, Collective Soul, and Default, and musicians like Nathaniel Rateliff and the Sweats or Jimmy Page sing about wasted or wasting time. The lyrics are often about the vanity of chasing after dreams and making plans that won't work out, or just as often about how relationships that seemed so promising at the first turned sour and became, as the song says, a waste of time. One of these hit songs, Refrain, outright claims, "Time on me is wasted time." So sings Kings of Leon in their Wasted Time. Is that what time is all about? Is it, as Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes 3, that there is a time for every purpose under heaven, but without any real meaning in our otherwise meaningless lives? No, of course not. For God, the author and manager of time, has shown us how time can be redeemed. Let us first understand that the concept of wasting time is misleading. It's a misnomer. Time does not belong to us. Therefore, we cannot waste something that isn't ours. Ultimately, we are accountable to God for how we manage the time He has entrusted to us. For instance, The first generation of Israel was delivered from Egyptian bondage and promised a land flowing with milk and honey. But they failed to believe God could follow through on his promise. As a consequence, that generation therefore perished in the wilderness. As he saw them pass away, Moses wrote Psalm 90, explaining that 70 or 80 years of life is, for the most part, all we get. But our boast is only labor and sorrow, for our lives are soon, he says, cut off, and we fly away. What then can we do to redeem the time, this short span of life on earth? What can we do with the number of our days? Well, what we can do is number our days so that we can gain a heart of wisdom and pray that the Lord establishes the work of our hands. Time is not wasted when we direct our hearts to the mercy and will of God for our lives. Joy and gladness come to those so satisfied with him, it says in Psalm 90 and verse 14. When we accept that he has made us, yes, even formed us in our mother's womb, and as David writes in Psalm 139 and verse 13, that he has actually planned the days of our lives before there was even one of them, Psalm 139:16. And even as the Lord told Jeremiah that God knew us and had a plan for our lives before we were born, Paul says something similar in Galatians 1:15. Then we realize that time becomes a marvelous gift to find out and fulfill God's will for our lives and glorify the one who loved us and died for our sins. So the Apostle Paul says to the Galatians, Galatians 2:20, I have been crucified with Christ, he says, and it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. In light of the above, another way to redeem our time and avoid wastefulness is to view our lives as filled with unique opportunities for meaningful worship and service to the Lord. Referring back to Ecclesiastes, the wise and experienced king of Israel taught, saying in Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 10, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For there is no work or device, knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you are going. Therefore, Solomon would tell us to apply ourselves to worthwhile work, tasks that keep your mind engaged, and for which you can express gratitude to God, as he says in Ecclesiastes 5:20, as God keeps one busy with the joy of his heart. One thing is certain, life is short, but the grave is long. So wisdom advises us to get busy. Although our days may present challenges and setbacks, when we acknowledge the Lord in all of our ways and trust in him with all of our heart, as we read in in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Through all of them, we redeem the time. The Apostle Paul writes of this in Ephesians chapter 5 and verses 15 through 16, where he says, so then, do not walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Finally, let us walk wisely among those who are yet to come to faith in Jesus Christ. This is done by being careful in our speech, being gracious in our tone and choice of words, and considering how we must respond to each person. Listen again along the same line to the Apostle Paul in Colossians chapter 4, 5 through 6. Colossians 4, 5 through 6. Walk in wisdom, he says, toward those who are outside, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. Some unbelievers may even ask us about our faith. Well, are we equipped and ready to respond with reasonable answers for our faith, as Peter advises in 1 Peter 3:15, always being ready to give a defense to anyone who asks us a reason for the hope that is in us, yet doing so with gentleness and respect. The popular songs of our day parade the plight of the hopeless, their short lives flitting away in aimless pursuits without God. Of course they are angry. Of course they are disgusted and sad. Who wouldn't be? But the Christian also faces uncertain days and may even lament his situation. After all, nearly half of the Bible's Psalms are lamentations. But in the end, he sings with David, Psalm 13 and verse 6, I will sing to the Lord, because he has dealt bountifully with me. Time on God is no wasted time at all, and knowing him makes all of life worthwhile. Let me encourage you to hide away in your heart the last verse of David's famous Psalm 23, where he says, And I will dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. And I hope that you will too. I'm Michael Chandler, pastor of Victor Valley Bible Church, located at 16439 Hughes Road in Victorville. Our services are held on Sunday mornings at 10:15 and live streamed on YouTube starting at about 11 o'clock. For more information, please visit our website located online at www.victorvalleybiblechurch.com, or if you wish to email, my email address is bibletrom@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and may God bless you as you live out the Bible in these days.